Hi everyone, welcome to Dear BAMf, the show for PR and marketing pros like you, hosted by Beck Bamberger of BAM. BAM is a communications agency that believes stories move the world. We move stories forward for technology-driven brands that challenge, change, and create entire industries. Today, on the Dear BAMf podcast, we're talking with Nick Morris, Global Head of PR and Communications at Onna. With over 20 years of communications experience, Nick specializes in PR and media relations, particularly with business, national, broadcast, and IT trade media. He's worked with companies through major launches, reputation change, mergers and acquisitions, and many other unique business situations. Let's dive in.
Hey everyone, welcome to Dear BAMf, the podcast for marketing PR pros such as yourself. I'm Beck Bamberger. I'm the CEO of BAM, an agency that represents all venture-backed technology companies in their comms and marketing strategies. And today, we're very excited. Coming from all the way from London on the airways here, Nick Morris from Onna, who heads all the PR and communications globally for this wonderful startup. Thank you, Nick, for being here.
It's an absolute pleasure, Beck. Really, really lovely to be here.
Took a while for us to get this on the calendar, but you know, COVID, all that stuff, here we are.
Yes, a few rearranged meetings, but
all good.
We're here in the end.
Yes. Well, first, why don't you give us the 60-second soundbite on what Onna is all about?
Yep. So Onna is a platform that integrates information. Let me tell you what that's all about. So information in organizations massively fragmented. We use dozens, maybe hundreds of apps, amazing, brilliant apps to do our work. We use Salesforce for CRM. We have Zoom and we're all on Zoom all the time. G Drive, Office 365, everything. All these amazing apps, best of breed apps that we use for different tasks, which has meant that information is massively fragmented. So we have a very smart platform that's machine learning and artificial intelligence that really inhales, sucks in all of that information, makes it useful, accessible, and private. So we're a knowledge integration platform that's bringing all of your information together. Apparently 25% of our time is searching for our own information. That's just ridiculous.
What?
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that, actually. And you know what I do is I'm like, okay, wait a second. Is it in the drive? Did it say it in the Slack message? Is it in an email? Did it upload on Monday? Where the heck is it on? Yeah, I relate to this.
And the challenge is that the vast majority of the information that we manage, that we use, is unstructured, which is a massive change.
Yeah.
And unstructured information is notoriously difficult to find. So whether it's a Slack message or an email or a chat or whatever it may be, it's a big problem that we're trying to solve.
Yes, I think a lot of people listening to this can relate to this, especially in the world of COVID. Everyone's working remote and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, what could you say, Nick, are you most proud of accomplishing, say, in the last 12 months? Well, you've been at Onna under a year. So maybe in your time that you've been there, what are you most proud about?
Well, I think it's at Onna and it's also at the previous company as well. And if you think about 12 months, it's almost to the day, well, just shy of a week or so from when the pandemic started and we were all locked down. We were stuck in our homes. I think the thing that I'm most proud of over the last 12 months is the real shift from external to internal comms. And I've always managed both, but the prioritization has changed massively. So
tell us more.
Yeah, and in my last company, when the pandemic struck, all our external comms plans basically went up in smoke.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we'd started the year. We got to, I guess the beginning of January, we had plans that we were circulating internally. Everyone was very excited. All the events stopped. Media were not talking about what we were trying to sell. They were talking about the world changing dramatically overnight. Not only that, but the media world was changing as well. People were losing their jobs. People were changing beats. We needed to shift dramatically. And also our stories were less important. That was previous company, but I guess, current company as well. We weren't saving lives. We weren't stopping pandemics. So the focus was shifting. But our audience that suddenly became really important were our own employees that we couldn't see as easily. We couldn't put our arms around them. We couldn't just do those kind of nice, easy check-ins as easy as we had done in the past. So internal comms just went through the roof, and the companies that were slow to recognize that, I think, struggled and found that really hard.
Definitely. That's quite the shift that a lot of us have had this last while of the internal focus. By the way, how many people are at Onna, if you could say ballpark, so people get an idea?
130, and previous company was about 600.
Oh, okay, yeah. So internal is definitely the priority then.
Yeah.
Wow. Maybe it's tied to this, but let's see. What's your favorite way to tell a story right now?
So I'll give a kind of a broad answer, and then I'll talk about something specific as well. I have, as long as I can remember, tried to tell stories with problem first. And lots of people will do that. But tech industry especially, I think, starts with solutions, starts with themselves, what they're all about, how many people, who their executives are, when they started. It's kind of not interesting for the audience. The audience wants to know about an understanding of their problems and how they're going to be solved. So for a long time, and it goes back actually to my days at Microsoft, where the Microsoft, and this was old Microsoft, and I think it's changed unbelievably under Satya Nadella. But it used to be, we have all these products, which ones do you want? And when they were Windows and Office was everything, then it was easier to do comms that way. But this was around, I guess, early 2010s, when flexible working was just coming on board, when people were starting to talk about something called the cloud. And there were new upstarts. Google was really making a lot of headway into enterprise space. Salesforce was getting really big and strong, whole bunch of others. This was, before the likes of, Zoom had even been thought of, even a twinkle in someone's eye. So,
yeah,
this was, I think, going from starting a conversation with what your solution is to starting with an understanding of the problems that people are facing within the world and how you may be able to address them. And then a very kind of specific example of what I've done to try and tell those kind of stories is I've produced 3 books, and I definitely think I've got 1 or 2 more in me. And the reason that I like books is because it's a longer form of storytelling. It doesn't need to be, a 60-second clip. Trying to get your whole story across in 60 seconds is tough. In 150 pages, it's a lot easier. But you get into real stories rather than just facts. And viscerally, handing someone a book, we're not with each other and we're not seeing enough people. But when we produce these books and being able to hand them over rather than let me send you an email and there's a download is very different.
It is.
That kind of experience. And it's funny how you watch people, one of their first reactions with a book is that they smell it.
That is so true.
Right. So it's it's visually very pleasing, hopefully. You can feel it, you can touch it, and you can smell it as well. And so it touches more of your senses, which makes communications more powerful. And people appreciate you handing them something that's a physical thing that they often, when I hand people one of the books that I've produced, their reaction will be, can I keep this? So it's a very tangible thing and definitely work that I've loved doing. And I hope that there's another book in me.
Oh, I think there is, Nick. It's quite the beast, though.
Yes.
To have those come out. There's a friend of mine, of course, now I do not have the quote at hand, but basically said, the irony of a book is it's so cheap to hold the vast array of someone's work in your hands.
Yeah.
Like years of their work, typically. And you get it for, $24. There you go. Yeah. It's really incredible to think about it in those terms.
What was funny was that, so these were work related, they were being produced on behalf of the companies that I was working with. But we realized very early on that if you put a price on the back, even though you're never, ever going to charge anyone, people want it more. So there's an associated value.
Good psychology there. Yes.
Right? We never charged a penny, but there was a price tag on the back that said £9.99. And we had conversations about, if we ever make any money, where does it go? So, it would be to a charity or some kind of foundation. Never happened, but people wanted it more because there was a price tag.
Good little tip there in case anyone's listening, got a book to push out for a client or something. Good. All right, Nick, we got some hefty questions, so let's check it out here. First one, Dear BAMf, after 15 years in the market, our company is going through the process of updating and refreshing our brand. Unfortunately, some members of our senior leadership team think this isn't a worthwhile effort and our brand is just fine. How do you recommend I approach this issue and find a way to help them understand why a refresh doesn't mean our brand changes completely? Nick.
Good question. Okay. And this is a big question as well. I would start with bringing in some kind of external expertise to back up what you're saying. Very often, if there's a bit of some people agree and some people disagree, you'll end up with an element of an intransigence that means that they're just not going to come to your way of thinking. And if they do, it will be reluctant. So it needs to be based on facts rather than feelings. And if it's just you as the comms person arguing your case against people that don't agree, then it's not going to be a healthy outcome. So I'd recommend maybe some research, some focus groups, as painful as that sounds. The other thing to challenge the person asking this question is the reality is the brand might be just fine, and to question yourself. So to be open-minded, if you're bringing in others to give their opinion, and it might be, as I said, some focus groups, then what they end up recommending might not be what you want. So you need to be open to that as well. And to have that outside-in perspective, I think, is really important to prove to both you and your C-suite, your execs, that the outcome will be beneficial to the business.
I'd also add, to zoom out as you're suggesting, what's the goal? What's the mission of the company and what you have? So looking at the values and considering the mission or the vision statement and going, okay, considering that vision, does this match? Do we look that vision? Do we uphold, if we're about being positive, but we've got all these dark images, for example, on our website, like, is that matching our values? So perhaps consider it from a values and mission vision standpoint and do a consideration there. Now that isn't qualitative, like in the mention you are saying about focus groups, but it can help alert people or bring to the fold people, any of those naysayers who are maybe saying, yeah, it's just fine. It's just fine. But you point back and go, wait a second, our vision is to be the most cutting edge technology company in space dynamics. We would be like, is just fine okay for that type of vision? You guys, maybe I have a great case study on this too, with the founder who had, frankly, a product that was just world-class in the marketplace, totally an up-and-comer, doesn't have all this funding, is just like blazing it in this industry. So I'm not mentioning too many specifics, but, this product was state of the art. And the website looked like someone's back office side project in the summer. Someone like just it did not match. Now for them, it wasn't as important for the time when they had this little rinky dink website and kind of this brand that they just kind of cobbled together. But as they got bigger and bigger, people were looking at the website and you're like, wait a second, how can I be buying this product? And that's what I look at online. So that prompted them to do a $200K, brand investment. And now their website absolutely looks as cutting edge and modern as their product is in the marketplace. So that was kind of the wake up call for them.
I think people get very emotionally invested in brands as well, especially if it's ones that they represent, I'm guessing. But there might be two things going on here. Number one is that you've probably got some jaded execs that have seen from a distance some rebranding go wrong and a huge amount of money being spent. And they think, we need to not do that. We've got other priorities. The other thing is that they might be emotionally, historically invested in clinging on to, the company as it's grown. And changing the identity is an emotional thing, and that needs to be recognized.
Absolutely. One other thing, and we'll leave this question, is sometimes people think like, oh, brand refresh. Oh God, I'm going to spend X amount of numbers. So I wonder if you're getting any feedback from someone who's like in charge of the money and going, wait a second. I don't want to spend $100,000 doing that. Or is it going to cost me 50 or whatever? And so there, you might get some trouble just from someone thinking like, yeah, that's a silly thing we got to do. We don't need to spend money on that. We need to do it in employee engagement or whatever it is. So maybe consider who is giving that feedback and if it's tied to money.
Yeah.
That's what we often find. Oh, we're not going to spend anything on PR. Well, we always, it's the CRO who says that.
Yeah.
Just saying. All right. Next question. Dear BAMf, my client has a product launching soon, but nearly all of their competitors are already offering something similar. What's more, my client does not have any customers that beta tested this new product that are willing to speak publicly. How do we still manage to set their product launch apart from what's already available and make a splash with the announcement? Glad I'm not this person.
This is really hard. And
This is trying for sure.
yeah. So the reality is, if it is a product that has nothing different, it's a really hard sell. But my first advice would be find the differentiators. Find something.
There has to be something.
If the question says, I think you said offering something similar. Well, similar isn't the same. So find elements of the product that do stand out, that are different, that provide a solution in a slightly different way to the competitors, and really focus on those. I would say also, especially with early products, very often you won't have customers. And it's painful, especially in certain circles. At Onna, we deal with knowledge and data privacy. Many of our customers are legal teams. You can imagine how many of those really want to be referenceable customers. It's challenging. We have amazing brands and very happy customers, but getting them to speak on our behalf is tough. So we work around that. Having a customer be a reference isn't the be all and end all. It's a very, very nice to have and should be prioritized. It should be something that you really try and get, but it doesn't have to be there. There are other things that can make it newsworthy as well. Is there something about timing? I remember in my agency days, we used to talk about, if there's nothing new, let's do some research. And I think that's been so overdone. But you can do things in a sort of similar way that are smart, that prove why what you're saying is slightly different to everyone else. And you don't have to be dramatically different. I think you need to be slightly different. I would also really push back to the client to say, we need some differentiators here.
Yes.
Go back to your engineering folks, go back to your product development team, go back to whoever, and show us why this is different. Because if it is just a completely me too, same again product, good luck, it's going to be tough.
This brings me to the question of, do we need to make a big announcement? Why do we need to? If this is a product that's like catching up to what the industry standard or expectation is, you probably might look a bit silly being like, oh, hey, we just added that thing where it text validates you or something where it's like, wow, how'd you guys not have that? That's just silly and expected at this point.
Yeah.
So really dig into that of why do we need to make the announcement? It will always be the preference of the internal team, the people who just sweated this all out to typically make some kind of splash. But an announcement can also be, hey, let's just work on an internal email that's going to go to our customers. Let's put it up on our blog and how that looks. This doesn't need to be, now this person writing in also says like a splash, but like it doesn't have to be a media splash.
Yep.
Maybe you could do some cool social media video work on it to announce it, something like that. So there's different ways to just think of the announcement. I just push back on, doesn't need to be necessarily something you try to pitch to media, knowing that you're probably not going to get legs. And now you're on a fool's errand.
Yeah. And I think people also hear press release with announcement.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the tech editors at The Guardian, when I was at Microsoft, so this was probably 2013. So that's 8 years ago. I remember her pleading with me to say, please do not send us any more press releases. They go in the bin. It's so overinflated. And that's not to say that we don't do them, because we do them sometimes, especially as a fast growing startup. We need to make noise. And as painful and as soul destroying as this sounds, I will do a press release not to get a lot of coverage. I'm okay with that.
Yes.
Sometimes it's showing momentum on your own website.
Yes.
Avoid things like wire services that are, I think, generally a waste of time.
Yes.
Because the coverage you get from those are pretty poor.
Nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. You get syndicated rubbish that no one reads. But you can tell a story. You can make an announcement by simply, as you say, putting it on your own site or telling people around you, rather than shouting from the rooftops and expecting that the Financial Times will write it.
Exactly. Agreed. Well, last question then, Nick, for us for today. Dear BAMf, my company's external DEI messaging doesn't align with our internal efforts. Oh boy. As a company's communications director, I've tried pushing back and communicating that we should be transparent with our audiences about our current planned DEI initiatives, even if we are not as far along as we'd like to be. Unfortunately, I'm being met with pushback and asked to inflate our commitments, despite us not making much, if any, progress towards these goals. How can I get my C-suite to understand this could lead to a PR nightmare down the road?
This is a lovely question.
Oh, God.
Kind of rubbing my hands with this one. So I think the word that panics me the most about this question is inflate our commitments.
Yeah.
The reality is that what people say about DE&I and exactly what they do are never going to be equal. You can have ambitions. You can say that you're on a journey. You can say that we are making every effort to make improvements. The tech industry is notoriously bad in terms of opportunities for women in senior positions, for people from ethnic backgrounds. But we work really hard to try and change that. To inflate the result, to lie in any comms is just the biggest no-no. So I would avoid that at all costs. It's okay to say we have ambitions and we have some way to go. If you're really running up against challenges and being forced, one of the things that I would encourage you to do in this situation is bring in a friendly journalist and get them to do a test interview. It needs to be someone very friendly, because you are deliberately going to trip up the person that you're going to interview to show them quite how bad it could be. So, this is media training. The topic is specifically around DEI initiatives, and they will ask about intentions, and they will then ask and uncover about the reality. And, you'll show, I guess, an example of what a car crash it could be, rather than letting it become that. Hopefully that will shock people into realizing that you need to be really careful, and that inflating commitments or making out that you're doing something that you're not is just the worst thing to do. I also think that there is a difference between reactively responding to questions around diversity, equity, and inclusion and proactively pushing. So I would prepare spokespeople to be able to reactively respond, which would talk about, the efforts that we're making and the journey that we're on. And yes, we need to make improvements. And that's always the case. Proactively talking about these kind of things, actually, I think just do it rather than promote it. Just focus on the fact that you're keeping your house in order, that you're putting your best efforts in, and crowing about it it doesn't leave a good taste. People aren't going to be impressed if you're claiming to be really good at diversity. Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah, that was our take-home message in a panel that we just had with a bunch of CMOs. It's not a trend. It just is.
Yeah.
So just do it.
Yeah.
And you know what the ultimate success of this will be? Is it's not even a topic.
Yeah.
in 10, 20 years, how many other, years we're going to have to do with this. We'll probably be long in this because it's going to take that long, but it will not be something as discussed. So I'm on the same page with you on this. This is awful territory for this person to be in of, what was the exact word? Inflating? Yeah, inflate. Oof, man. No. And the other thing is, I like your bold action there, Nick, which is, try it on with the journalists, see how they squander and squirm and all that stuff. There's that technique. But also there is plenty of coverage you can snag from all over the internet of the lampooning that has happened from media about any brands that have done a piss poor job of this, saying they're doing this, and this, and actually it really sucks to be in that company. And here's 20 ex-employees who say otherwise there. There's so many of these stories as examples. Or the counter, which is, oh, look at all these brands saying this and that, which basically means nothing, and they're doing nothing. So there's also that of the absolute unmeasurable, oh yeah, we stand with people and nothing. So consider that. There's plenty of examples already robustly available to show how this is not great.
It's sort of an equivalent of ambulance chasing as well. Lawyers chasing ambulances. It's kind of similar ground. It's almost like at the beginning of the pandemic, my advice when I was in my last company was, for the first few weeks, because we'll go through phases, but for the first few weeks, we stay quiet and we don't comment on anything. And we also don't comment on those companies that are trying to cash in. And even if they do it if they think they're doing it in a respectful way, it will still be seen as cashing in. And I think it's similar territory. It's a kind of similar principles.
Yeah.
Better to show that you're constantly learning, that you're constantly investing in education rather than crowing about how you've got it all right.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nick, those are the questions of the day to solve the problems that we did. I hope that was helpful for everybody listening. There's never a lack of questions and problems to solve. That's the biggest learning from this show so far in all the interviews I've done. Would you agree, Nick?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And these were really good questions.
They were good. They were meaty.
They were really meaty. And I've seen people respond well to these kind of challenges and equally not so well. So all the people that wrote in, I wish them the best of luck.
Yes. Thank you for being on today, Nick.
It's been such a pleasure. Really lovely to catch up with you. Stay safe and well, and hopefully we get to meet in person one day.
We will.
Which is what I'm saying to everyone, I think.
Yes, I'm starting that messaging now. Cross our fingers, maybe even this year. Who knows?
Yeah, this year's going to be a good year.
Agreed.
Thanks for listening to Dear BAMf, the advice podcast for PR and marketing pros like you. Our show was created by BAM, a PR and marketing agency headquartered in San Diego and New York City. The music you're enjoying today was composed by Tiffany Dizon, produced by Daniel Kessner, and played by San Diego Symphony's Art of Milan. If you have a tough PR and marketing question you'd like us to answer, write to us at bamtheagency.com/Dear BAMf. Don't forget the F. If you'd like to get notified of our latest episodes, subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts and review us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.